All right, welcome everybody. We've got some people here and some people online. I'm just going to start with just a quick sort of introduction about who I am and where I come from. I've been working in clay for about 8 years now. I studied at the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. I focused a lot on functional wear at the sort of start of my career, and as I was working, I was finding that my mistakes and my errors often were more interesting than my functional pottery. I was always walking around the studio and looking at people's scraps on their wheels and finding little interesting points and little artful moments and trying to preserve those. What really launched my art now is I would take pots and I would just simply drop them on the floor, and they were better on the floor than they ever could be as an object. And I've got one of the pieces here, that piece on the far left there is an assembly of dropped pots there. So there's still remnants of that technique and style. Yeah, so I was at the University of North Texas for 4 years, graduated in 2016. Shortly after college, I moved back home with my mother, which she was about an hour away. And I lived there for a couple months, and I was always, I had to do all the chores and mow the yard and do all the stuff like that. And one night I went out with all my high school buddies and came home the next morning with a little bit of a headache and a little sleep deprived. And my mom dragged me to the market, the community market. She said, "You promise you're going to go to the market with me, so you're going to the market." And I went to the market and I met this woman who was making some pots and had a little booth there. And then she's, "Oh, I run a little community studio. You should come by, check it out." And I went and checked it out. And then I met a man there who was teaching classes, and he was talking to me about his ranch. He had 50 acres in North Texas, and he was looking for someone to come out and live on his property and help with forest mitigation. He was asking if I knew anybody that was interested in horticulture and wanted to come live on his ranch and do pottery. And I was like, "Yeah, that's me. That's me." And so I moved out to the ranch in North Texas, and it was a big, what they call barn-dominiums in Texas. So it was a big metal building with an apartment on top, and I lived there for next to nothing in exchange for just work on the land, cutting trees and sort of just doing forest mitigation stuff. But out there, I was able to find some native clay, so I was able to start digging and sourcing my own materials, and from that sort of search for the right materials, I was able to find a new technique of making, and I started doing this sort of slip trailing work, which if you saw the talk, there's some of it like that. I'll grab one of the pieces too. I have one piece left over from that time. I have a few stashed away, but this is one of those pieces. So it was sort of drizzled slip on there, and you can see. But that's sort of what started that whole thing for me. I spent two years out there, and then I got my first residency in Taos, New Mexico. I was working in a metal shop at the time too, and I was started off with just grunt work, just grinding brass and bronze all day with the angle grinder, and then I slowly worked my way into the foundry and was casting brass and bronze parts. But I had hurt my back. I had fallen climbing years ago, and I was just struggling so hard. Every day it was like, "Hey, you and me, we're going to pick up this thing." And I'm like, "Where's the other 4 guys that we need?" And they're like, No, right now we need to do it." And so I was just debilitated from my back. And so I decided that the job was not worth it was great pay, but it just wasn't worth the harm for my body. Would somebody? I think someone will let them in. That's fine, we'll just let them come in. But yeah, then I quit the job, and I went full-fledged into the studio. I made a series of work that was really sort of cohesive for the first time, I think. All the work kind of came together, whereas usually I was sort of doing all these different things. And so I was able to make one solid body of work. And with that, I sent out some applications, and I was actually on the very cusp of quitting. I had sent out maybe 30 applications in my time to different residencies or different jobs and stuff, and just nothing. A lot of times no response, nothing, and just so disheartening. But I was also really interested in plants, and I had worked on a couple farms and stuff, and I decided that if this this whole clay thing didn't work out, I was going to go back to school maybe and learn more about horticulture and learn about biology and learn about plants and dedicate my life to that. But I said, you know what, I'm going to send one more application. And I sent it, and then 2 days later I get a call like, hey, we'd like to interview you. And then I got the job, or got the gig. And then I moved to New Mexico, and I spent a year there at the Taos Clay Studio. And I did a lot of wood firing there. I was still making some pots, but I started this sort of tube series that I was dropping and scrunching clay, and that was sort of a continuation of the dropping of the pots, but in a different manner. From there, well, I made some really great connections there and learned a lot about wood firing. Spent a lot of time around wood kilns. Hey guys, come on in. Yeah. But from the Taos Clay Studio, after a year there, I had some options. I was potential for staying in Taos for another year, or I could have done an apprenticeship. And then there was also a job that I had gotten in Santa Fe, and it was dealing with human and pet remains and sort of creating them into physical objects. But then I also got a residency in Arizona, so I had these like options, and it was so hard to decide. I was asking everybody what to do, but then I ended up just going with my gut, and I moved to Arizona to the Wrights Ranch, and I spent a year there. A lot of wood firing, a lot of soda firing, and a lot of just like experimentation. And out there, I made some really great connections and great friends. It's in the middle of nowhere, out near Sedona, Arizona. It's just strikingly beautiful. And yeah, during the summer, I'd get in the river every day, swim in the river, and it was kind of a life out there. It's very opposite from what I'm living in now. I was like 25 minutes out of town. When the pandemic hit, I'd go 3 or 4 days without seeing another human. And I was kind of okay with it. There was points where I would feel like, wow, I just need to see a person, just like I need to go into town just to look at somebody. But I was able to really dig into the work, I think, and I was also pretty happy on my own out there. And I was able to just entertain myself. And from there, I made some connections there, and then I got invited to do this residency here. And it's almost been a year now. I can't believe it. And the work has changed a whole lot, but also it feels pretty similar. I have a couple pieces on the wall over there. So the top piece on the wall there that's hanging, and then the bottom piece there, those were some of the last pieces I made at the Wrights Ranch. So you can see that I've sort of taken those direct things and moved from there. So I've recently fired some work. This is all from a recent bisque firing. The things that I'm most interested in, some of these pieces over there, those flat pieces, the wall pieces, I'm really I don't want to say stuck, but I'm really fixated on wall work. And I'm kind of constantly battling that, I need to branch out and I need to do more other things. But I think it's okay, I'm trying to tell myself that it's okay to just focus on this one thing for a while. And I am making some sculpture, I made this weird thing here and some other things. But, I think I'm really just gonna dig in more into the wall work, because I think that's how you learn and that's how you get better, is just through repetition and trial and error. And I recently got accepted to a residency in Montana. So I'm moving to Missoula, Montana in September 1st. And I will be the wood fire resident there. So I'll be sort of running and dealing with all the wood kilns out there and organizing them and teaching workshops on them and stuff. And the kiln out there, they've got a really massive kiln. So if you're familiar with our kilns here, we've got one of our biggest kilns is the 40 cubic foot. The wood kiln out there that I'll be firing is 720 cubic feet. And it fires for over a week. So it's definitely a commitment, and it's a little daunting experience, but I think there's a really good support group out there that have all fired the kiln and they all know it. So I'm really excited to get out there. I've just got a month left, and then I'm making this work. Hopefully everything dries in time. I've got a show coming up August 14th at the Pomona Packing Plant, and working title. Fraught moments, or fraught with potential. I love this this word fraught, because it's kind of has a negative connotation, but with potential, because my work is very constantly failing. I'm There's always this element of like, it's not gonna work. So I think fraught is an appropriate word. I'm not totally attached to it, but I think it fits. Other than that, that's basically the spiel, but I think I'm gonna make throw some clay around just for fun. So what I've been doing lately is I just making these slabs. And I mentioned in my online talk that people like to say that I should go into the pizza business because I've gotten really good at throwing out slabs. So yeah, I'm throwing out these slabs and then I sort of smooth them out. So I'll throw this one out and smooth it, and then I'm going to chuck this other one at the wall. And I've devised a system. So if you can see these pieces, they've got all these ripples, but they're sort of have a compressed nature. They're not like totally loose. You know, they feel like they're solid on there. So when I first started, oh, I thought this was something else. When I first started doing the thrown wall pieces, they were looking like this. So you can see it's much looser. Also, this is like definitely not gonna make it through the firing. The only reason why I'm keeping it now is just to learn from. So what I devised, so I was throwing these directly at that piece. So I was taking a slab and throwing it directly at it, and I was missing. My aim is not great. You know, it's like a slab of pizza clay, and so it's really hard to get the aim perfect. So what I've devised, the system, is I throw it at this paper here, and then I peel it off, and then I set it down, and then I start to build with it. And it's quite fun. Let's see if we can do it without failing too hard. So I take it. So sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. But then from here, doesn't go directly on there. I'll put it down, and I might like take this edge and roll that edge over like that and sort of work that in. Or take this edge. And then so this is, you know, that's just one piece. Whereas, you know, this piece is maybe 50 of those. Also, you know, this can be taken, and then sometimes I'll like fold them up like that. And then, you know, you're getting it a little bit. You know, the way I work, it's like, you never know what's gonna happen. Sometimes I'll just take it and then throw it again, and then that's actually really interesting there. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing lately, and it's really fun, and I encourage everyone to just like play around with some clay. Take a pot, chuck it at the wall. Yeah, this one's actually really nice. I want to preserve that. It's like this ring here. So, yeah. Is there any questions about anything?
So we have a question online that says, what clay body is you currently working with?
I'm working with Stony White. It's a white stoneware. It's probably my favorite clay I've ever worked with. It's strong. It's got a little bit of sand and grit to it, but it's really plastic in nature. So you can see how much it stretches and moves, and big thanks to Laguna because they donated a ton of it, not a ton, a half ton of it to me. And it's allowed me to just move and have fun and do all sorts of fun stuff with it. This is actually a blend of Stony White and B-Mix. It's my reclaim. But other than that, mostly Stony White.
Hey Grayson, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Quick question. Do you have a shape in mind before you actually throw it, or do you kind of just let it?
I think I am getting there where, you know, I'll work with a certain shape of the slab, and then I'll throw it in a certain manner. Right now I'm working with these sort of elongated forms. Yeah, I think I try to have a loose plan, but that's definitely like not always the case. I think a lot of times I'll just go into it, and like maybe when I'm first, like I just finished this piece, so I'm going to start a new making cycle, and I have a couple ideas, but I'm just going to come into the studio this week, and I'm just going to throw some clay around and let it sort of tell me what it wants to do and where it wants to go.
Right, okay, great.
Yeah.
And then another question, you're kind of limited on what you can hold.
Yeah, no, I have a few pieces where I required some helping hands. My brother was in town a few months ago, and he and I tried to make some work together. I don't think I was good enough at giving him the directions, so the pieces didn't work out very well. And then I've also devised some tools. I have a couple tools around. I think they're kind of stashed away right now, but I have like these long dowels with foam wrapped around them so that I can take things and extend my arms like 3 feet. And I'm definitely thinking about that, and I'm trying to figure out how to scale up because I am very much limited to the length of my arms. Yeah. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Another question I have is, do you ever combine brass bronze with your ceramic sculpture?
Not yet. I think a lot of I've heard, this is what I've been told from many people, is that the modern artist practices not just one medium. So right now it's all clay, but down the road and down the line, I would like to incorporate other materials and do all sorts of other things. But right now it's just clay. I would like to, though. Maybe some splattered brass or bronze from a foundry or something like that. I was always really inspired by the drippings from the crucible. You'd be pouring and you'd miss a little bit, and then you'd get this like little brass or bronze splatter on the ground. And I was always like picking them up and trying to save them, and like, but yeah, I definitely want to be thinking about that in the future. Yeah.
That tall piece right there, is it hollow? Is there a tube in the middle?
Yeah. So I built a large tube. I coil built a really big tube, and then just really scored and slipped the surface, and then attached the pieces to it. And I've sliced it into thirds. There's a couple slices, and I actually didn't do the best job slicing it. It had dried up a little bit, so it kind of is a rough seam there. And this is definitely a learning curve for me, so it's kind of a disclaimer that this is like, it's here now, it's finished, but it's not finished yet because it still has to go through the kiln and get disassembled and then reassembled after. So it's high likelihood that it doesn't make it. But it's cool now.
What will happen in the kiln to not make it?
Well, a lot of different things could happen. Like these pieces could maybe not attach to the cylinder. The piece itself could warp where it doesn't match, doesn't line up, which would make the piece unsuccessful in my mind. It could blow up, There's a ton of trapped air and trapped moisture in there, and I'm going to fire it too soon, It could
What temperature?
I'll bisque fire it, and then I'll fire it up to cone 10, I think, in the gas kiln, which is cone 10, which is 2,350 degrees. Yeah. And I'm unsure about the surface. I'm thinking, we've got a really lovely black glaze, and I'm thinking maybe this black glaze for it, which I think will sort of blend some of these lines together. It's kind of funny, I'm either thinking the black or the white. I haven't decided yet, but this is a great little test. Black, you like the black?
That size of a piece, I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's a really reliable glaze too. And it's, even if it goes in different parts of the kiln. Some glazes, if they're in certain parts of the kiln, they'll look different. And I think this black glaze is kind of tried and true. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what'll happen. But yeah, here, I'll give you the tour of it.
How many pounds of clay does that have?
I'll tell you when I have to pick it up. So I reclaimed a bunch of clay, and it's probably 300 or 400 pounds, maybe less. But it's cut into sections, so hopefully it's like this is less than 100 pounds, and so yeah, I would guess maybe 300 or less, hopefully. Yep. Yeah.
How are you going to keep it together?
I'm going to pick your brain about that. I was thinking, well, hopefully the gravity of it will hold it, and then I was thinking about using some silicone. And then I'm also thinking about eccentric, because it's like a lot of times you want to hide these lines, the seams, you don't really want them, it's kind of distracting. But I was thinking maybe like a thick layer of silicone, maybe even like brightly colored silicone, and then as I put it together, it squeezes out and it accentuates those joints. So rather than hide them and try not to let anybody see them, show them off. but that's sort of still to be determined. I'd like it to be able to, I'm showing it, and then I'd like it to be able to get moved easily. So if I really attach it really well in a gallery, then I have to move the whole thing as one piece, which would be difficult. But yeah.
Where can I purchase your work?
You can go to my website, and I've got my email on there. As of right now, I've got a ton of work in the studio, and I don't have it listed online. But if you see anything that piques your interest, and if you just follow along, I will be, before I leave for Montana, I will be doing a big portfolio update. And I sort of I used to have a site, a store, but now I sort of just sell through my site and through my email, and also through Instagram too. Yeah. And also at my show, August 14th in Pomona, I'll have a lot of work for sale. Yeah.
Where is it going to be exactly?
It's at the Pomona Packing Plant at a gallery called On Tap Gallery. Yeah. It's right next to the brewery there. Yeah. Great little space.
So what do you do with your failed pieces?
Oh, I've got a big old bucket over there. And so before clay gets fired, you can always reclaim it, you know? And so...
No, but after fire.
Oh, after firing.
It came out and you don't like it.
Oh, I just smash it, put it in the dumpster. At the Wrights Ranch, there was a large sort of bluff down. You know, a lot of clay studios, like old established clay studios, have big shard piles. And there was 40 years of shards. And so before I moved, I took, you know, maybe 800 pounds of fired ceramic over and just put it over the hill, which, you know, in some people's mind, it's like, oh, you know, it is kind of wasteful as far as materials and firing goes, but that's kind of part of the process, I think. But yeah, I will be also purging a lot of the work here. You know, like I think all the stuff on the bottom there, a lot of the stuff on the bottom there is not super successful work, so a lot of that will probably get smashed before I go. I keep it there now so I can learn from it. But yeah, I failed quite a bit here. But luckily, I've learned to figure out when it's going to fail earlier on. So like I'm always reclaiming my greenware, you know, and so that's before firing. One of my good friends always had a joke that how to make clay useless is to fire it. Then you can never reuse it, you know, which I thought was always a really funny sentiment. But yeah, hopefully not too many more failures. I'm always telling myself, you know, it's like, oh, you learn from failure. You know, you're always learning. You're always learning from failure. And I'm like, okay, when am I going to stop learning? But I don't think I ever will, and that's okay. You know. Yeah. Is there any other questions? Are we all good? All right. Well, thank you guys for joining. Thank you for joining online. Yay! I feel like I should clap too. All right. Thanks, guys. Yes, thank you.